We're gonna shift our focus over to Yaesu, one of the most popular manufacturers in this hobby of ours, and we're delighted to welcome the national sales manager. I don't think we've had a chance to talk to John before in Visalia. At least I haven't, but we're thrilled to have you here. And John is the national sales manager, and you can see his call sign. And I'm going to stop sharing and give you the stage.
Sorry about that. Technology, right? Alrighty. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's, of course, John Crook. My call's N9UPC. I'm the national sales manager for Yaesu. So basically, anything under the umbrella of amateur kind of falls underneath me. Usually in the past, when the conference and conventions have been, in person, usually we have Tim Factor come on out. We have a couple of other people that come on out, largely based on the facts because I'm based in the Midwest. So lots of times travel for me, it's not a problem, but I usually get tied up with a lot of shows during the year. Obviously, with COVID, a lot of things have died down, simmered down, which has been pretty good there. And we've been doing a lot of cyber presentations, and I was very honored to be asked to come and present. But today, what we're going to talk about, obviously, is HF radios, but kind of a little bit of a more of an understanding of HF radios where a lot of people aren't per se are usually used to on there. And it's more or less understanding some of the history of our Yaesu products. And then I think more importantly is you understand the concepts of how we're going and what we're doing with our Yaesu product line, especially in the HF radio area, because time to time, we will release a different series of sets of products, and we try to cover the whole HF gambit. We try to cover from, your high class, high quality, high duty, powerful HF base stations to more of a quasi smaller base, but sort of portable station to our mobile stations on there. And right now we have obviously the full running of thing from the top of the line HF radios. Number one on Sherwood report list. Numerous people have, talked about the receiver performance on all those, which we'll talk about. And then we go all the way down to the QRP rigs and stuff. But instead of trying to do a horse and pony show, which sometimes I don't like to do those too much, just largely based on the fact that everybody can be like, okay, yeah, I can read the own information and read the specs on this one. You can tell me how good it is. That's fine. But, I want to know a little bit more about Yaesu history. So that's what we're going to do today. And I'm going to share my screen here. Let me share that up here and let me start from the beginning. So part of the presentation we've been talking about with the HF. So we did HF, some presentations in February. We've been doing it little by clubs and stuff like that. But once again, I thought it'd be kind of nice to say, hey, welcome to the Yaesu family. Here's where we came from. Here's where we started. And it's really important because this fostered the ideology, the thinking, the original creation of the company way back in the 50s kind of led where Yaesu is today. Now, a lot of people say, well, duh, that's what happens. But no, we try to stay true and to the point of where we came from for the company. So the Yaesu family started with this gentleman right here. His name is Sako Hasagawa. His call sign was JA1MP. And I'll ask you to remember that because I'll lead back to it in a minute here. But this gentleman right here, right now, was the one that started. He had the passion for amateur radio. He was a TV engineer. He put his family through, as they say, tough times. It's sort of like I hate to use this term, but for sake of a better term, it's kind of sort of like a rags to riches story. He worked hard. He wanted to have high quality radio. He built basically radios, and he built radios here in this house. And finally, after building radios, coming together, his engineering designs and everything, we formed Yaesu Munson Ltd., which was in 1956. Now, a lot of people, and this is kind of fun, a trivia part. A lot of people ask, and come up to me at booths or stuff like that, and they say, "Hey, I know where the word Yaesu comes from." I've heard people say, "Oh, it's it means this in this language, or it means this, or this is what the connotation is, and everything." I was like, "No, actually, what Yaesu is sort of like, I guess, for sake of a better term, here again, would be like a suburb of Japan." So what happened in this case is Yaesu derived its name from where the location of the company was started. But this gentleman right here, he started the company, and well, unfortunately, he has passed on. His spirit, his memory, his vision of the company has stayed true through his son, who currently owns and run the company. So what are the things about the Yaesu product line, as you'll see as the radios are popping up on the screen? And some of you are going to say, "Yep, I've had that radio. I've enjoyed that radio." Some of you may even say, "Hey, here's the deal. I actually still have that radio." Is we've worked on it, and our design comes from a certain aspect or thought of things, meaning this is what's happening here. This is what's going on. We want this radio to focus on. We did this. So if you start taking a look up at like our first rig, the FR100B, and then, excuse me, the FTDX400, the FT101, first solid state, really giant radio was the FT107. And then you have the FT 2000 in the corner down there, or excuse me, FT 1000. But what it is when we were designing our radios, if you want to say, hey, if you lie out the timeline, 1956 is here, 2012 is right here, what are the pivotal points? Well, the pivotal points we've had in our radios, which are we feel is key in the HF line, is why we do what we do, is we worked on concepts of the radio. So when we started, we worked hard to make sure it had the best and the most sophisticated receivers in the radios. Once we came and hit to a point where we couldn't really improve on the receivers anymore, whether that be because of technology or whether that because of whatever it may be at that point in time, we then took a look at how can we improve the receiver, what impacts the receiver. And in that case, we moved on to filtering. Once we maxed out on the filtering concepts, we went back over to the receiver concepts. And you see that through our products. You see that through our designs and technology. A good case example and a point is here's like the FT101, kind of that tube-based kind of aspect of things, worked on the receiver. Then we started working on the filtering. And it's kind of repeated over and over again. Good example, then another one for more of a more current one would be the FTDX5000. Alrighty. And I'll get to these in a little minute, but we've done that and we're doing it now, as a matter of fact, with our current product line that is out there. And that really is why we tend to see a lot of people that come up to us where they go ahead and they say, you know what? Yaesu is not just going to go ahead and put a pretty face on a radio, make the display ooh and ah, or have it has 2 antenna ports instead of 1, or whatever the case may be on there. We're not going to glitz and glamour it, okay? We're going to give you what we designed to do to have it the highest quality of a design and of the feature set on there. Now, we also understand that there's going to be people that want things in a radio that may not necessarily be available, or at this point in time in this model, it may be something that can be done. But we do take it under advisement. We do take the suggestions and we see how we can work it in. Everybody always gives suggestions. I get probably, I'd say right now, about 4 to 5 emails, since the start of 2020 with COVID, people saying, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Some of the things we can, some of the things we can't. Some of the things are firmware, some of the things are actual hardware. And we send it up to research and development in Japan and everything, and they see how they can integrate it in there. But this is where I'm going to go and talk about it. So the FT101, not the first radio by Yaesu in any way, shape, or form, but one of the most pivotal radios by Yaesu. And the reason I say that is because this is where we came into that concept of how can we work and continue to maintain the high quality or the high performance of one aspect or one component on of radio, and then add on another component. So enhance that component that we added on, but how to make it integrate and work correctly on there. So the 101 is where we start to really show we can maintain high quality, high performance in a receiver technology, but now we can start adding filtering in. Now we can start adding more aspects of how, by using other aspects and components to enhance something. And that's that one, put it in your kind of, timeline push pin there, and you'll see it kind of go from there. Excuse me. But now we're going to jump ahead a couple decades, I think, roughly. And what we did is the radio you see on the left is the IDXC2021. So when we came out with the IDXC2021, we really, really were working hard on a radio, on a design and a concept, features and everything that was going to have high performance of a receiver, but start to add more function and availability on those receivers, because not only did we do the high performance of receivers, we added a dual receiver, the dual functionality in there, and just made an overall great contesting, great featured rig. But what we started it at that point, which I think is as a key point for our customers, is we realized that for some, the FTDX2000, when it was out brand new, was a higher tier, higher performance radio that maybe more so the average ham, the rag chewer, the Sunday morning net guy is going to want or have. Now, for full disclosure, when a contest comes up for me, I won't sit down and I won't pound the key. I'm one of those people that I'll take part in the contest to do the best that I can to hone in skills and do something like that, and offer contacts, obviously, for people who are heavy into contesting. But I fall into that latter group of saying, hey, you know what? I like HF. I like good performance. But for me, buying a FTDX2000 or higher tier rig is going to be more of a luxury for me than a necessity. So that's where this next concept of where we came for the Yaesu product line is we said, why should we, in essence, kind of sort of punish the people that don't want to have or have the money to spend or can spend the money on a high tier rig, but want some of those same great features. And then at this time, this is where we came up with the concept and released the FT950. So in this case, they're a brother and sister rig, if you really think about it. And that really helped people on there. Do you have as many features? Do you have all the bells and whistles that an FTDX2000 doesn't have? Well, no, you don't have dual VFOs. You don't have dual receivers, these kind of things. It's more slimmed down, where the FT950 is, excuse me, more of that. You have a single receiver, but you have that receiver performance. You have that receiver quality. You don't have obviously as many buttons and knobs and everything, because more of it is put into the menu system. That kind of brings it down into cost. So now what we're allowed to do, to offer to people, is to say, hey, here's the deal. You can't afford an FTDX2000, but you still want performance at an FTDX2000 level. This is where the 950 comes in. Excuse me. So this is that concept that we came up with, starting with this rig. Now let's go ahead and fast forward all the way up to about 2010, around that time frame, 2010 to 2012. And the same thing happened again. We came up with a rig, and it was the FTDX 5000. And we had a couple different models on it, but I want to bring back real quick, is because you see on there, it says the MP. Earlier I said, remember our owner, original founder of the company, Sako Hasagawa JA1MP, his call sign was again ends in MP. So what would happen is that anytime you have a top of the line version of that model, that is when we assign it the MP in honor of Mr. Sako Hasagawa, in order to say, listen, here's the deal. We have built this with the highest features, the most everything you can sort of put into a rig, in honor of continuing on with that HF tradition. His focus, his views of saying high quality, good design, everything like that in the radio. So that's why you'll see the MP. So that's kind of a little sidetrack there, but that's kind of an interesting point of there. So looking at the FTDX5000, we did something different this time. We did kind of 2-in-1. So what we did is we said we changed it and we did a 9 megahertz down conversion of a receiver, because most receivers up until about that time, just about all of them, for regardless of manufacturer or anything, was using an up conversion or something on there. Well, that's very common when you make a wide variety of radios, especially if you need to have a receiver technology that covers a large band of radios. So for example, multi-mode rigs, you know, your HF 160 all the way up through like your VHF, UHF kind of rigs and stuff like that on there. Or it's just easier to do it that way. But what we did is we said at this level, we said, let's do a 9 megahertz down conversion. And the easiest way for me to kind of explain it to people who may not really be familiar or understand the thought processes is that when we're doing up conversion on receivers, what are we doing? We're looking up at the sky, right? And if it's raining, what's going to happen? All the rain's going to come in our face, right? But if we do down conversion, we are looking down. We are looking down specifically. So anything else that's going to come down, obviously like rain, it's not going to come in our face. It's going to kind of pool off on there. And like I said, that's just kind of the layman's kind of way that I kind of describe things. But in addition to this change in the receiver technology, which, as a side note, I wasn't with Yaesu at that time, but I was a customer then. And the funny part was, I heard so many people say, listen, here's the deal. This down conversion thing, this isn't going to work for them. This is going to be a disaster. You know what I mean? Or they laughed or they balked at it. Next thing you know is people started using it and they're like, oh my goodness, this radio has great receiver performance and does that. Now, in addition, when talking about receiver and talking about filtering, we come into, excuse me, adding on this micro tune. Now, the micro tune, once again, was that concept of saying, how can we improve the receiver? So when we came up with the 5000, we're having receiver performance and we're having filter quality. With the combining of those twos, really made this rig shine. It was just absolutely amazing. The performance level was there. Many people used it. In the last WRTC, I know, I think it was the second place group, if I remember correctly, was using FTDX 5000s. So once again, that receiver performance was there. But once again, what we saw happen with the 2000 and the 950 was kind of starting to happen again. People said, hey, I want a high performance receiver. I want a high performance radio. What can I do to get that without spending, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars? This is where we came up with the FTDX 3000. 3000, once again, like the 950 to the 2000, 3000 was a single band receiver, or single receiver, still all the HF bands. But what it did is it brought a offering, a solution to customers to say, hey, listen, here's the deal. I want to be able to have the performance of 5000, but I don't want to pay the price of the 5000. So yes, certain things were different. You didn't have dual receivers. Once again, you had a single receiver. You had that receiver performance. Buttons and knobs got turned into more of a menu level item. But once again, we wanted to be able to extend that out to people who wanted to be able to still take place of the AHF rig. So now we're going to fast forward. We're going to go from the early 2010 era all the way up to 2018. And in 2018, we had the presentation and discussion at Hamvention. Now, what were we showing there? We were showing, it was all under the dome and everything like that. So many people wanted to touch it. As a matter of fact, we had someone kind of every 30 minutes go ahead and clean the dome because there were so many fingerprints on there. But we had the FTDX101 series. Now, we had the FT101. Now, this is the FTDX101. And this is where we entered into the SDR market. Now, I've heard numerous people say over and over and over again, Yaesu was too slow into the SDR market. And I'm going to disagree with you. And the reason I'm going to disagree with you is because when I started at Yaesu in 2017, this was already coming through halfway, almost to the end of the production, or I should say beta design and everything like that in there. And one thing I found out interesting, which didn't really know as a customer, and you really didn't know unless you work for the company, is the research and development that went into this radio to say what we weren't going to just take a current existing radio, rip out the analog receiver, slap in an SDR receiver, put a new model on it, and send it out to sale. No, we realized a couple things. One, when we're doing with SDR, things are going to change. Operational things are going to change, how we need to set things up, how things interact. That is going to change. And with that change, we have to be able to effectively translate it, change it, for sake of a better term, to a usable state on there. One of the things we found out with SDR, and I know myself because I played with like little SDR dongles and stuff like that, is the, what do you want to say, the best feature of SDR in a way is almost its worst feature of SDR, and that is it receives well. If you have an SDR receiver, if anybody's played with SDR receivers, you will know and see that, excuse me, it can receive too well. So in poor conditions, what do we want? We want to be able to pick people out of the mud, right? Hands down. But in great conditions, everybody else is going to be out there. And if they hear that weak signal coming in, and I've seen it on contests, I've heard it on contests myself, even when playing with my SDR radios, I've kind of been in a similar situation of saying, hey, guess what? I can really pull that out of the mud. But once again, if those other people are hearing that too, they're going to be going over it. They're going to be overloading your front end. I mean, I have a fellow ham that lives about 10 miles away from me. When band conditions are great, and we could have antennas completely opposite of one another. Okay, and even at 10 miles, depending on power and band, sometimes he'll blow me out. So with that being said, you have to incorporate those things of what SDR can do different positively as well as negatively into the whole picture. So that's what we did with ours. We took our time to make sure that was going to be done correctly. One of the other things that we did is we added some more of the features of what we've heard people say about HF operation. And one of the biggest things is the 3DSS display, okay? And some people have complained about it, and they said, I don't think it's a real worthwhile feature. But there's been a lot of people that have said, hands down, this is an amazing. And the concept really comes into is that what are you doing? You're spinning your dial, you're looking at your frequency on this beautiful display. And what's happening is you see a nice spike, okay? And you know something's there. But what does it happen? Of course, you're spinning. And by the time you get there, what happens? That spike goes away. So now what are you doing? Well, am I on frequency? Am I not? What's going on there? But with that feature, the 3DSS display, we can say, hey, even if that signal, so this is the signal, and as I'm trying to tune it to where I'm at, if that signal drops, yeah, the time domain is not going to show it, but the last time it received a signal, it's still going to stay active on your display. What does that mean? Well, that means, am I going and tuning the dial? Even though that signal's not there, I could still see where that peak was because it's a time reference. And then when you have that time reference, now what ends up happening is that, hey, I can sit on that area and wait to hear if that signal comes back. So that's kind of the nice feature set of on there. But a lot of people then pop up and ask, and they say, well, so why is your SDR different? Why did it get a great rating? Or more importantly, a lot of people say, is it truly an SDR? Well, I'll pose this question to you. Excuse me, once again, my throat's really dry today. I'll pose this question to you. Does it matter if your car is a front wheel drive or rear wheel drive or an all wheel drive? And the answer is, no, a car is a car, right? Vehicle's a vehicle, 4 tires, a wheel, engine, right? The same concept we feel is with SDR technology. Why do I have to put my receiver right at the front, as close as I can get to the antenna, and then let it come in with every single bit of like a downpour of signal into it, and then try to filter that out? All right. What is wrong with going ahead and saying, I'm going to take this slice of bandwidth? Okay. If let's say I'm on 80 meters, I like to play on 80 meters. So if I'm on 3967, do I really need to have all the way down to 3.8? Or do I need to have, going up into the 4 megs area, the whole thing? No, I just want this little tiny segment of that band I'm using. I want this maybe little scope of things. Maybe I want 3960 to 3970. I want a little chunk and segment there, right? So that's what we do with the band pass filtering and the roofing filtering. We narrow that down. We keep it pure, but we narrow it down so that when it's hitting the FPGA, or AKA the SDR receiver, what's happening is we're now taking and saying, we're only looking at that little segment. Let the SDR work on that little segment instead of trying to fix and look at everything. And then you're trying to do a funnel effect. All righty. So that's where we've been able to achieve these high values, and values are values. I'm going to tell you that, yes, I could pop up here and show you what our dynamic range is. You can read the Sherwood reports. You can do all those kind of things, but it really, really, really comes down to the performance of what you're able to do with the radio. Now, I'll tell you this. I have not had a chance to sit down to a level of I want to play with the 101. I've played with the 101, done things, at shows and stuff like that. Tim Factor at our office, he's in technical support. Tim's a great mentor and this kind of thing. But I'll tell you, Tim gave a great example to me that I'm going to steal and use for him today. And he said, with the way the 101 is designed, we can take that S2 signal and we can bring it up forward to it. And it's not going to be something as in like, oh, great, we're picking signals out of the mud. It's going to be not only are we getting that signal up, but what are we bringing it to for a audible, usable signal for us? And with that 101, it can really take that signal and change that weak S2 into almost like a high quality S9 plus single sideband. My neighbor that's 10 miles away blowing me out on my other radios. Okay, we could take it and make it that signal that's just strong and solid in there with that. In addition, into the FTDX101, what we also did is, once again, we did that concept from before of taking the 101 And the 101 is high priced, and there's a D model and an MP model. Okay. The D model is 100 watts. It runs on a normal 12-volt power supply. The 101 MP is a 200 watt model. You need the special power supply speaker that comes with it. Okay. But you need to, because with an SDR, it's basically a computer that is a radio or doing radio functionality on there. But once again, took that concept. What do we do? Well, we introduced the FTDX10, which could be called the little brother, the little sister of the 101. And what's happening in this case then is that we're taking that radio, bringing the features down to it, to a more manageable, to a more cost-effective range for the radio user. Now, one thing I really like about the FTDX10, and this is once again coming from my operating standard, which is once again not a heavy contester, nothing. I like to rag chew, talk to friends, do those kind of things on there. Maybe I might take part in a contest or something, but I'm not doing it mainly. And that's the aspect of an entry level radio for your usage. Now, I've heard people say, well, the price point's not entry level. Well, that's subjective and an objective. Okay. Is the cost of a car versus a pickup truck a lot more? Well, yes, it is. Why? Because a pickup truck can do more than a car, but there's levels of that pickup truck. There's levels of those cars. If you're getting into this radio, you're getting into SDR technology, you're getting into that same receiver performance that people are getting in that 101 on there. But the aspects of the FTDX10 is really a mindset of saying, wait, hey, here's the deal. I can get into SDR. I can get into it at an affordable price. I can learn. I can have high quality receiver operations and performance. If you look at the Sherwood report, which a lot of people like to go by, the FTDX 101 is number 1. The FTDX 10 is number 3. All righty. So if you're only 2 spots away from number 1, you got to figure that, you're getting as close as you can without actually being in that model of radio. But the operation is where I'm just totally amazed. And for those that want to start, in my opinion, to get into HF, to get really going into there, this is a good radio for them. The menu systems are easy to operate. You do have the output to the TV, so you can see the display on a bigger reference point, which makes things a lot better, especially trying to pick out those signals in the mud. But really, once again, we're doing that concept of high performance receiver, high performance filtering into there. Now, is this comparison a common one? Yeah, it is, because that's what we're doing. We want to make sure that people are able to get in to use the radio that they want to be able to use and not break the bank. Okay. You could do very good in contesting and DXing and everything like that without having, in essence, a lot of the high tech, high end equipment. Lots of factors go into that. That's another thing too. I get asked a lot is, well, I bought this nice radio and I'm not doing really well. It's horrible on receive and stuff. And then you talk to him. I remember one guy that came and he made his homemade 80 meter dipole. Okay, nothing wrong with homebrew stuff. I do a lot of my homebrew HF antennas, but you only have it at about 5 feet off the back of your house up in the air, and you're kind of in a metro area. Yeah, that kind of thing is going to impact performance, of course, hands down. But as we start to progress and go forward with our technology and a lot of our HF stuff, we are starting to add more functionality to it. And this real quick is the SCU10. The SCU10 is our network control or remote control system. What this is going to allow you to do, it's going to allow you to take and move around inside your house. So downstairs where I'm at in my shack, my work area, Maybe I want to be outside, I'm sitting next to the smoker for a couple hours and I want to hop on and see what's going on 10 meters or 12 or 40 or 80 or whatever the case may be. This is going to allow me to do it. It's designed to be used on your LAN network, on your home network, to remote back, to basically for sake of a better term, take all the controls and aspects of the radio in front of you, put it onto your computer, and then go around the house. You can do some WAN activity, so you could do some, stuff away from home, but it's really designed for home network usage on there. And a lot of people have found it, once again, kind of like looking at me, saying, hey, I can't be downstairs. I got to be up, I got to be with the kids, got to be not stuck in the shack all day long. So this will allow me to kind of step away from it and kind of do that voice operation that I wish and wanted to do on there. So I'd like to say thank you, excuse me, for allowing me to present. I do apologize. I've been doing a lot of presentations and online meetings, and my throat has gotten the better of me this weekend. But I do want to say thank you. Visit our Yaesu website, yaesu.com. If you're into digital system fusion for VHF, UHF, that's there. We do have our own YouTube channel, and we are on social media. And now, just to kind of make sure I have enough time, I will open it up, but I'll go to any questions.
Hey, John. This is John K6MM. I just want to thank you for a refreshingly different approach to talking about your product line. It's interesting, just looking at the etiology, the whole history, and it's just, I can tell from some of the comments too that people have been making on the chat reflector that they appreciate your approach of this whole topic. It's a complex topic, and I think you're taking a kind of a common sense approach, just trying to explain it in a very logical way. So we got some questions for you.
Sure.
What plans does Yaesu have to update their HF QRP offering?
That's a good question. We do get that asked a lot. Obviously, some other manufacturers have released a few things. Right now, we recently did an update with our FT817 to the 818. And I'll explain that real quick because I see we got a little bit of good time here. A lot of people said when they heard the 818, a lot of people was like, oh, it's a new design, this and this and this and this and this. What happened was the 817 has, the best way I can describe it, like a cult following. And it's two sects of cult following, which I was really shocked to find out myself. The one obviously being the QRPers who literally like want to do QRP, the parks on the air, kind of sort of like, I always had to laugh at our brochure because I don't know where they find all these snowy covered mountains, but it's like someone climbs up a mountain and want to be able to operate HF from there. Perfect. Understand that in all the way aspects on there. But it also has a big cult following, believe it or not, with the satellite groups on there. And that's why we continued with the 818. Excuse me. Now, one thing to understand, the 818 to the 817, and this is, I bring this point forward because it explains why we did what we did in the past, but it also will help you understand where we're coming from in the future. We want to keep QRP. A lot of people will say, wait, QRP is 5 watts. I've heard people say, no, QRP is 10 watts, those kind of things. But when we did the 818, we were keeping the 817 alive, but we had to get a new TXCO, so the transmit oscillator. That gave more stability, better performance. But then what that did is it kind of caused a domino effect because with a better TXCO, we were able to increase 1 watt. Well, when we had the better TXO and increased 1 watt, we had increased the battery. And of course, then guess what happened? Because we had enough change with those 3 things, next thing you know is boom, we had to do an FCC recertification because it wasn't an 817 anymore. Enough components had changed. With that being said, we're looking at how we can make our QRP, but still have features. And I guarantee you, I know a lot of people are hearing this and are thinking, where are you going to come out with an SDR? That I don't know yet. I'm going to be hands down, I don't. I know that Japan is in a lot, and I'll say this, and it's about all I can say, it's a lot of research and development right now. And I can say that if a new product is going to be coming out soon, that there's going to be a purposeful track and design aspect of the QRP radio on there. So do I have an answer saying, yeah, we're coming out with a radio and it's going to be this date, this time, and this features? No. But can I tell you that research and development is going on? Yes. And we're not sure. And I guess I'm not sure because they're very tight-lipped about it, which tells me that they're working very hard and they're working on something that I think will be pretty amazing. And once again, be at the top of its class.
Okay, that's good. That's fair. Now, John Warburton, and there have been a couple of comments about this. This is going to take you into the area of firmware updates.
Mm-hmm.
John Warburton is G4IRN, very well-known contester and DXer from England, says, I love my FTDX101. However, Yaesu messed up big time with the April firmware update. It exposed a lack of quality control and disconnect with the users. Have Yaesu learned from this? He says, yes, I know a corrected version had been released yesterday. Thanks. He says, honestly, I am a Yaesu fan, but the last software wasn't great.
and the best way I can describe that is that when we did the firmware update on the first one, it corrected some other issues right away. And it was one of those things where it's not a lack of control. I think that's when you say something like that, you really get into a subjective and objective kind of comment and saying it on there. We release firmware updates based on no time frame or something, but when we hit a few key things. And a lot of things were brought forward to say, hey, we need to address this and this and this right away. When we did those things, that corrected other things that people wanted to. There was a few minor other, how do you want to say, I don't want to say glitches, but minor other things that could have used some other updating. And that's what this other one did. I will tell you the one that was released within the last couple days, when it was beta tested, no problems. Not only did it continued to keep the corrections of what happened before, but it also did these other things that more so what we received word on was people saying, I thought it was going to correct this. I thought it was going to correct that. And I think that's where a lot of the complaints came in on there. Now, there were some people that had issues with doing the updates, and I would say majority, probably, I would say 80% of them was there's a certain step that you have to follow. Yes, it is very easy with the 101 and the FTDX10. You put the SD card in, you have to do that, but you do have to do a button press after the firmware is done to take it out of that kind of firmware mode and kind of do a reset and an update on there. So yeah, we've heard that, but saying that it's a quality control issue, if it was a series of events, yeah, I could kind of say that, but I feel this was just really isolated, and we wanted to, I should say, not need, but wanted to do an update to address some major things that have constantly were being brought in. Did it affect the operation of the radio? No, it didn't. A lot of people were saying, oh God, I heard the people say, oh, you're doing the Microsoft update and this and this. No, we were really working on a few things, and we kind of finished out the list is what we did.
Okay. K2RD, Ira Stoller has a question. He says, I have an FTDX 5000 for over 10 years. Mm-hmm. Is there any continuing development on the firmware for the radio?
Unfortunately, I hate to say this, but there was an announcement about 2 weeks ago that the FTDX 5000 will be ending production. I don't know exactly how we're going to continue, or if we will continue to produce updates for firmware, that is. What we have out there now is pretty much about it. Depending on what we see, I would say there's probably a 95% chance there's not going to be, but there always might be something that might be done within the next maybe 6 months to a year or something. But I have no hard proof or have been told that's what's going to happen.
Okay. John Harris says, can the FTDX101D be operated remotely via the internet?
So yes. So when you get into the SCU LAN or SCU10 LAN unit, it can be operated remotely via the internet using our device. One thing I will caution on is that because of everything that needs to be done for operation, the display, everything, as you kind of saw on that screen, I'll try to go back to it here real quick. Let's see if I can go back here. That screen there. So on the right-hand side, the screen there showing the different waveforms, the ability, everything like that. It does take some setup and finesse to do in order to use it over the internet, because you're almost doing like a direct IP connection. You need a couple ports set up. You need that kind of thing on there. That is something that we kind of ascribe to you in the manual, but it's kind of left up to you. Now, the other thing about it is, if you're operating it remotely, especially via like hey, I'm in Houston and my radio's back home here in Wisconsin, you're going to be able to do voice. You're not going to be able to do like CW. You're not going to be able to do any sort of digital modes. And the reason being is the internet and lag time. There's no way to overcome lag time, unfortunately. So yes, it could be done. It's going to be voice. You're going to have to be able to understand how to set up the IP connections, but it can be done.
Okay, Bob Wilson, does the FT101D waterfall display still get cleared after every transmission? Also, is there any way to use the FT101D USB sound card to record your own CW side tone and voice transmissions?
Well, I'll start out, I guess the clarification on the first question, like, so
does the waterfall display get cleared after every transmission?
Yeah. So I'm assuming, because sometimes we get questions asked like, if I transmit, then is it still going to go ahead and show the signal where it was at? And yes, it will still show that signal going away. So I'm thinking that maybe that's what we understand. Now, in regards to recording, I'm going to admit there is a way to do the recording, and it escapes my mind right now for like in that CW setup. With the voice, you can do that with the M1 microphone, but I'll be honest with you, that would be something I would refer to having you contact our office and talk to Tim Factor directly about that, because he can be able to describe a little bit more on that aspect, if it's possible, or how it could be done. In regards to the USB card on there, that's a full USB device on there, so I could see where he's coming from, but I think it's going to be more so out of the audio ports on there. And I apologize that I'm not able to answer that directly.
Jim McCook asks, what's being done to address the typical Yaesu CW key clicks problem with regard to increasing CW rise time options and increasing that default setting? It's called Whiskey 6 Yankee Alpha.
Mm-hmm. And I think maybe you have, Whiskey 6, I think you've probably called in and talked a little bit about this. There is some research being done. I know that for some, the problem has been solved with some of the firmware updates, but we've been taking those reports and we've been looking at it. And if there's something that we can apply to the fix, then we will. A good example was the ALC. When the F101 first came out, there was some people started to report an issue with an ALC overshoot with specific type of amplifiers. We went along, looked at what those amplifiers were, and we were provided a firmware update that solved that on there. So I do know there has been some reports of that, and the firmware has cured some of that, but I know they are still looking into that.
Greg Wallace has a question. Is there a way to do custom waterfalls color scheme via injection as a menu upload?
No, the the colors basically are built into the what you can select on there. I know people have asked, like, can I change different color palettes or the kind of thing on there? No, they kind of are at a set level on there. I know people have suggested that, so I don't know if it's something they can incorporate into the next firmware or not. But right now, it's kind of set at that spectrum of what you can choose from the menu.
Okay, Bill N6RV says, I'm amazed at the quality and depth of the Yaesu designs. How many people work in R&D, and how long does it take to bring a radio from concept to production?
Ooh, that's a good question. So our R&D teams are based out of Japan, at the actual main a corporate global office, I guess you can say. The exact amount of people, I don't know for sure. And the reason being is because depending on the radio, depending on what's going on, it could be a series of teams. It could be one whole team. So it's kind of different from there. The time frame from like day one we're starting to radio to when it comes to fruition and FCC, that can vary. And the reason it varies is because what is going on. So for an example, the FTDX10, a little bit faster because we already had the receivers and stuff like that from the 101 we were using. So a lot of those kind of things are in there. That sometimes makes it a little bit easier to do that. Just in the time that I've been with Yaesu since 2017, it could take a year. I've seen a couple radios that have taken longer. But you got to remember, not only when we design a radio, it's not a paper radio is what I'll kind of say. We do build concepts, beta units, those kind of things. We do testing. It's nice that they include us all in discussion about all radios. And I mean, all the radios that we design. The features are discussed, those kind of things. So obviously a lot of that is non-disclosure, but with that, it can really vary depending on what we're doing on there. And that's unfortunately sometimes. And then the FCC holdup, good example, the 101, that was delayed a great amount of time because the government shut down. I mean, it was like, hey, great, we got news that the FCC 101 paperwork's been, or the FTDX 101 paperwork's been filed for FCC type acceptance. And then next week, hey, by the way, the government shuts down with the FCC being part of the shutdown. So it's like, oh, great. Well, then when they start back up, is it they're going to pick up right where they left off, or what's going to be the situation?
Roger Miller asks, are there any plans to add CW and digital capability to the SCU LAN 10?
I don't think that's going to happen. Like I said, we've done some testing, but it's the lag. There's really no way we can overcome that lag of it there. And the reason I say that is if, when we're talking ping times and we're talking about jitter, we're talking about all these factors of the internet, what happens is that, the internet's designed to try to constantly, control itself. Even on your home Wi-Fi networks, it's trying to design to kind of control itself. So what tends to happen is that, yeah, you can kind of sort of do it, but you're going to be doing like at like a half a word a minute, because any sort of fast king, there's no break, there's no time. So it's constantly like a long status tone, for sake of a better term. Digital modes, that's kind of difficult. And the reason it's difficult is because when you're doing a digital mode, where are you doing the digital operation from? If you're thinking and doing it as, hey, here's a computer, we're running the digital mode, we're putting it into the network, which then goes into SCU10. Now we have to, in essence, not just create a stream for the SCU10 with the audio that we would normally have, but we basically would have to design how can we get the program data into that stream, basically create a tunnel to the radio, and then have that data stream then go out. So for example, like FT8, okay, you connect it in there, it connects into the mic ports or connects in USB sound card. Well, now we're we're going almost 2 rings out if you think about it, because we have the radio. Well, normally we would connect the computer to the radio, but now we're going to the LAN unit. That's 1 ring. And then now that LAN unit needs to go out to the connection. And let's just say we're talking about a LAN. It's kind of hard because we're trying to build a bridge into a bridge that's already there. So I know they're looking at things. I know they're working on things. Is it going to be an update to a 10? Is it going to be a new device? I don't know. But that's some of the issues that we kind of face right now with it.
All right, we only have time for one more question and we'll have to stop it. Here's a question from Ernie Rader. He said, can you talk just for a few minutes about the new HF mobile radio, the FT891?
Okay. The FT891 came out in 2017. It was designed out of a request of what people were saying. And what people were saying is I love the FT857D, but there's 2 things they didn't like about it. They didn't want VHF and UHF. They didn't really do the sidebands. They already have usually VHF and UHF radio separate. They wanted a little bit of a smaller, a little bit more compact radio, but they wanted a little bit of a higher performance. If you actually take a look at the FT857D, you could buy an increased or an upgraded TXCO as an option. And if you put that upgraded TXCO in there, it gave you a better response. I think it went down to like 0.5 ppm, I think it was. I don't remember the exact specs on it now. But basically, what you were doing with that upgraded TXCO in the 857, we did that and put it into the 891 as standard. The other concept that they did with the 891 is they did a tiered menu system. So you have an A, B, C button on the front. You can program those for quick functionality. Me, I use it for my A tasks. I have the tune and then arrow up and arrow down to fine tuning. Then you have like an F menu button, which, yeah, you got to kind of go through a couple screens, but those are going to be more of the menu systems that you're going to be using on a somewhat regular basis, but not too much. And then we designed it with a deeper level menu, like some of the things where you set it and forget it. It does have a remote head. It does do the ATAS 120, which is really nice on there. So a lot of features built into that radio with the design of saying, I want to use it in my car with little to easy mobile or interventions while driving, versus being able to use it at the house where I can adjust the menus, and also then doing transportable. So like, parks of the air, field day, those kind of things like that.
Okay, John, I know you had to speak fast there. I'm going to invite the rest of the folks who have questions to contact you directly. Is your email good on qrz.com?
I'll give you the direct one. So it's j.kruk@yaesu.com. So once again, j.kruk@yaesu.com. And if you forget that or you're kind of lost, go to our website, yaesu.com, go under the contact us, and there's a spot you'll see general questions, sales support, technical support, little drop down menu. Just go ahead and put that question in there, and either myself directly or we might have one of the technical support people or something would get a hold of you, the person who can help best answer. And that's for anything with Yaesu.
John, thanks for joining us today. You're an enthusiastic representative of your product line.
Thank you.
Really love your energy, and continued good luck. There are a lot of loyal Yaesu owners, and I think a lot of people are interested in especially some of the new products. So best of luck to you. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate you having the time to spend with us. It was great.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.